All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Wild Faith Podcast. My name is Evan Bungham. I have my co-host Luke Timmons with me today, and we are talking about turkeys. Welcome to the first episode of Turkey Talk, where we discuss turkey hunting prep and diving into the world of turkey hunting, uncovering strategies, techniques, and wisdom to help regardless of whatever the season is. And let's dive into it. So, Luke, how are you doing, man?
Doing good. Wish I could say the weather was doing the same, but it's what it is. We needed the precipitation. Just wish it was rain and not the white stuff. So
You know what? It would be boring if we lived in a state where the weather was the same all the time. So
it keeps you on your toes.
thankful for Minnesota. I think you guys kind of dodged maybe a little bit of a bullet, but we
Definitely.
have easily over probably a foot and a quarter, maybe a foot and a half of snow on the ground. So
Yeah.
awesome.
We got maybe 6 inches, and it's probably down to 3 or 4 now. It was almost 40 degrees today and just rainy, so it's just going to be a swamp the next couple weeks. But
Well,
we'll
we
take
needed
it.
it though.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Definitely needed the moisture. I mean, we needed it up here, but was not ready for snow. First time, no, this was the second time using the snowblower this year. So that is a weird statement to say because we haven't had a winter like that in a hot minute. What was it 2 years ago that it was the most snow we've had on record ever in Brainerd Baxter area, and now this year, this snowfall we just got. It's probably more than we've gotten the whole entire year.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Which is crazy.
Yeah. What do you do?
Well, and the funny thing is now this is kind of tying into what we've been used to, I think, the last couple of years now for turkey season is where it's been cold and wet or snow.
Yep. Yeah.
I can't think of where turkey. I was anticipating it for being a dry turkey opener, and I think we mentioned in one of the other podcasts where it was going to be, maybe an early season, and maybe that gets pushed back now.
Yeah, we'll see. Been out driving around just kind of our local spots and looking for turkeys, and definitely
Nice.
found them. They're still, I mean, like you said, it's probably still obviously, but very early season yet, and so they're grouped up and
Did you ever get
large.
cameras out?
Yeah, yep. Got some Tacticam reveals out, and
Nice.
yeah, for the price point, it's basically impossible to beat them. So,
Well, the world of the cellular. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this in other podcasts when it comes to we get more into deer hunting stuff. But man, the world of cellular cameras is just wild from an advantage point for scouting.
Yeah, well, and even to think of how far they've came, like in the last 5 years, right? Like when we started like deer hunting, and as kids, it was like I don't even know where they probably not even a thing, and then now they're just exponentially have grown and gotten just almost crazy.
I can
Good.
still remember my first trail camera was it was either a wild game or a wild view. I want to say it was a wild view, and it was one that would take 6 double D batteries and would have the giant flash like a Kodak camera would have.
Yep.
And blind any deer within probably a 60-foot radius.
Yeah. It is kind of funny to look back on like old, even just trail cam pictures of like, It was like, yeah, you had a big old flash, and it's, and now you get into the nitty gritty is, can the deer actually see the IR? Can they not? Does it affect them? Does the little red dot that comes on some cameras, do they see it? Does it bugger them? I don't know. Unless you're a deer, I don't think we'll ever truly know 100%, right?
No. And I have no idea if, I guess I've never really analyzed. I didn't really start using trail cameras until cellular cameras came out for turkey hunting until probably 3 years ago now, really.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's just kind of dive into it. I want to talk a little bit about too, just, since we're about 3.5 weeks out now for most states. I want to say Nebraska actually opens up, I think this week. But I'm not sure when South Dakota opens up?
South Dakota turkey. It's, I want to say April, about the same time as here, like the prairie.
Okay. Because because that's what, April 13th, something like that on a
Yeah, I
Wednesday.
think
Or
it's 13th or 12th for South Dakota, and then obviously the Black Hills is much later. I think it's 26th of April. So
okay,
yeah, so it's crazy, a month away.
we're here.
Hmm.
It's finally. Like I said, I'm a turkey nut, so
Definitely.
I am excited to kind of wipe all the dust off all the turkey calls, and I got a couple long trips coming up with work here pretty soon, and talk about a perfect time to get some road time and break in your diaphragm calls and really start dialing in. That's like the best time to
Yeah,
practice.
absolutely. Yeah. I've caught myself doing that and then looking over like at a stoplight and someone just staring at me like, what in the heck is that guy doing? But yeah, it's good.
So let's just kind of go through some, we'll kind of break down. This is our first episode, like we said, of
Hmm.
Turkey Talk, and we really look forward to having some other influential guests that know more than both you and I, and
For
learning
sure.
from them and their stories and stuff. But we just want to keep it kind of general for this first one, and just run through some
Hmm.
general tips and techniques, and just kind of staging with different seasons, and maybe tell a couple cool stories. And we're going to try to keep these kind of short and sweet, but get you guys some factual and some educational information out there, so you can be ready here in about 2-3 weeks.
Hmm. It's coming.
It's coming. So let's talk early season. So,
Yeah.
Luke, do you have any strategies that you can think of that, because I know you're new to turkey hunting here in the last maybe 3-4 years, but like
Yeah.
as you've got two birds underneath your belt now, like
Hmm.
any strategies from kind of a newcomer that you've deployed to that help with your success?
I mean, like anything for hunting related, get boots on the ground, get eyes, out from the truck, just driving around. That's what I've been doing lately, anyways. Just you know, figuring out roosting patterns, right?
Hmm.
They're still in those larger flocks, and so finding those trees that they're roosting in regularly, and then the big piece, and this comes into when you're even hanging trail cameras too, is making sure you're not disturbing them while they're on the roost, right? Because it's like deer hunting. You don't want to
Hmm.
bust them out before the season even gets going, and you have a chance to even make a play on them. So,
Yeah.
there's that. And then with feeding habits, I guess a little bit too is figuring out where they're kind of feeding. I guess right now with the recent dumping of snow, it kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in it. But just kind of focusing on where some of those leftover like grains are, corn,
Yeah.
where there's those really good green ups and stuff like that. And then once it gets a little bit warmer too, they'll be getting in on bugs and everything else.
Yeah.
So,
And like, have you been chasing? So, from your setup that you've kind of had, I know you've got a mix of public and private that you chase birds on. Is there like
mhm.
any specific differentiating, from the two?
um, I mean, I guess for me, I've kind of focused on like three different things in my that come to mind. Just fields in general. Whether it's a pick corn, pick bean field, um, open woods. We did some of that last year. You and I are doing some run and
Mm,
gunning, and then pastures. I guess whether it's a cow pasture or something like that, where there's not a ton of tall grass, that kind of
sure.
stuff.
Sure.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
I definitely think cool thing about turkey hunting is, I like we said it before, we're kind of the holistic hunter here in the Midwest, where we hunt anything and everything we kind of can. If it's from pheasants
Hmm.
to turkeys to deer, the waterfowl. And the cool thing I love about turkey hunting, I think it's like the perfect gateway to getting private land access. Just knocking on
Absolutely.
doors saying, hey, you know what, because not everybody's a big turkey goer, turkey
Not
lover, and
many.
it's one of
Yeah.
yeah, it's like one of those simple things, kind of like with pheasant hunting or small game, where it's sad. It's a dying breed when it comes to small game. Not a lot of people are asking to be able to, hey, can I go push your grove to go shoot some rabbits or
Right.
etc. But I feel like turkey hunting is such a great gateway to building connections and getting
Hmm.
access when it comes to deer hunting. I can think of a handful of properties that I have that, it's been 2 years of fostering relationships from turkey hunting that turned into getting finally access to deer hunt.
Yeah, and I mean, not even to try and go down that rabbit hole because that could be a hour-long
Yeah,
podcast in and of itself, but I think there is definitely an art to getting permission to hunt private, and that, becomes from when you're stepping out of the truck, going up to the door, and then all the way through the season and the end of the season, just thinking back, it's I guess just to keep it short and sweet, you're on someone else's property, so you don't wanna wreck it. You don't want to lose out on it. You don't want to, you want to treat it as your own, I guess. So I always just kind of keep that in mind. And when you can, and if possible, find a way to kind of pay them back a little bit, not maybe necessarily financially, but just little things, whether it's
yeah,
homemade bread or,
hmm
a venison roast or whatever, just kind of, or offering just, if it's a farmer, hey, do you need any help with whatever, mending fences, stuff like that, just to kind of keep that
definitely.
yeah, keep yourself in their good graces. Like I said, it's an art and something that I've tried to get a lot better at because like you said, it can be tough to find private, but turkey, like you said, is kind of a nice little gateway into, opening up for more opportunities down the road.
Oh, definitely. And the cool thing with like turkey hunting that I've noticed in the last probably 10 years now. I mean, I've been chasing birds since I was just a wee little kid with my dad. And I think I shot my first one um, when I was 12, I think.
Hmm.
And turkey populations in Minnesota have skyrocketed. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah.
there's birds everywhere. It doesn't matter. Like when we first moved up here in central Minnesota, I was convinced that there was no turkeys,
Hmm.
and I was going to have a hard time dealing with that because I'd have to come home every spring and chase turkeys. But I was most definitely wrong, and there's just as good as a turkey population here in central Minnesota as there is in southeastern Minnesota.
Right.
And we have family in International Falls and up by Roseville, and I've seen birds all the way up on the Canadian border,
Oh sure.
which I would have never guessed that in a million years. And there's different pockets of birds, so it's cool to see that the populations is skyrocketed here in the last, because I think they got introduced in the early. Someone's going to fact check me on this, but I want to say it was like the early 50s or 40s. Maybe the birds got introduced here to
Hmm.
Minnesota. They did like a trade with I think it was like Missouri or something like that for walleyes or whatever it was, and they
Huh.
did a program where they first introduced them. But it's been cool to see that because just from an opportunity just to get on public land too, like lots of different pieces of public now that hold birds.
Oh,
So
definitely.
this is a good gateway just to kind of get introduced to the outdoors and get on hunting. I mean, turkey hunting is not easy, but it can be. So that's the
Hmm.
nice thing about turkey hunting. It's either they're the dumbest birds in the world or they are incredibly smart and impossible almost at times to kill.
Yeah, and I would say that they are definitely even can be both of those things on the exact same hunt.
Yeah. Oh, no,
You're
definitely.
like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna," they're coming in on a rope and then they hang up at,
hmm
50 yards, and you got your bow and you're like, I couldn't do enough to try and get them to come in, or even just sitting there and shutting up and being quiet sometimes doesn't even work. So
Oh, I know.
it's fun.
Yeah, and like early season for me is such a fun time. Like you hit a lot of those good points on the head. I mean, turkey season at this time is just it's all scouting.
Hmm.
Having previous knowledge is I think is key.
Yeah.
Obviously having all those spots of honey holes that you've had in the past where birds group up and collect, and like I've been we're doing actually a bird on our family farm this year for the first time in probably like 10 years.
Hmm.
And I'm excited because I've been doing a lot of research with that. Like that's the best turkey food plot you could have, is doing a burning of a field, because that's going to be, we're doing a 5 acre burn. So we'll have pretty much a 5 acre fresh piece of dirt that is going to cultivate new grass, new bugs,
Yep.
etc. So I'm excited for that. But just boots on the ground, finding birds. Obviously, once you dive into the actual season of it,
Hmm.
hunting birds when they're grouped up is fun. Like it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun, but it can be also really, really challenging. And I can think of a story that I had probably, and this is, I want to say it's been probably 5 years ago now. I was out with Zach and we were out hunting on one of our private farms back home, and
Hmm.
it was a winter like we're having right now, where we got like a really late season snow, and we had maybe a foot. to a foot and a half on the ground. And birds were already grouped up at that time. And this was like opening week. And we went out there and we made it out super early, but didn't bring a blind. And we filmed the whole thing, which was fun. And this was the first hunt that I've ever seen a piebald turkey.
Oh wow.
And so this is like a 3-part story, but like, so anyways, this first whatever we'll just call it was 2016. It was, went out there, there's probably, I don't know, 45 50 birds out in the field. We worked in 2 toms. Zach ended up shooting a tom, which is good. And then, he was tagged out, we left. And then, but anyways, we saw this piebald hen who in the spring in Minnesota, you can't kill a hen unless it has a beard. And a lot of states, from my understanding, are like that, where it has to have a visible beard, to be able to shoot one. So anyways, fast forward 2 years now, we're in the 2018. Similar story. Get out there, no blind, there's snow on the ground. First week of the season, we see 3 piebalds. And the one of them is a hen that has like a 7.5 inch beard. And same thing, me and Zach are out there with our bows. We didn't want to bring a blind because I don't know why, we were being stubborn. And same thing, there's like 40, 45 turkeys working out in this field. We get this piebald hen to work into about 35 yards. I'm telling Zach that, and you got to remember, I'll see if I can find the footage, but we had probably, I don't know, 20 different toms in front of us between, 60 to 75 yards, because it's hard. It doesn't matter, like, early season, you almost got to have a full sequence and set of decoys where you have an arsenal of a bedded hen, a full strutter, a quartering jake, you've got feeding hens, you got breeder hens, like etc. All these different decoys where it's almost like waterfowl hunting, where you're trying to create this flock mentality to get these birds to come in. Because it's hard when you have got a lone decoy by itself trying to, you're competing against 45 other living birds.
Sure.
So we had all these birds out in the field, and Zach wanted to kill a tom. I'm like, Zach, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity to shoot this hen. And of course, we had 2 toms that just busted in on us at like 7 yards. And I think Zach actually missed one of the toms. But I never saw that piebald hen again. I hunted her in the fall for, I think, another year or 2. Maybe I saw her one more time. And I'll never know what happened, but it was like one of the most beautiful turkeys I've ever seen in my life, because there was 2 piebalds, and I want to say the hen was technically a piebald, but it was about as close as you probably could get to a true albino. So that was a really cool story. I'll have to see if I can find that footage and overlay it. But yeah, man, early seasons, like probably one of the most frustrating times, but can be like one of the most exciting hunts, just from the sheer fact of like, you're seeing so many birds, you're hearing hundreds of gobbles off the roost, depending on, where you're at, and obviously like the population of birds at the, where you're hunting at, but it's a fun time.
Yeah. A lot of, you can be anyways, a lot of action.
Yeah,
for sure. So I mean, like, just going off of, you talked a little bit about decoys there, but like, what would your, it's minutes, or let's say 10 minutes before fly down, what's your calling strategy?
for early season. Yeah, so like I like early season, it's one of those times where you can kind of, you got to be able to make yourself bigger than you are, I think. And having that ability of having, like for me, I've got, I think, 8 decoys. So having access to as many decoys as I can. Once again, like I've practiced my craft over the many of years now of being able to be proficient within mouth calling. Same thing with doing slates, and doesn't matter if it's a box call, whatever it is, but making yourself bigger than you are, and having, that arsenal of making me sound like I'm 5 hens, and I'm creating my own fights back and forth with myself, with other hens competing, just trying to get a group of maybe 5 toms, or if it's 3 toms, or if it's a bunch of jakes or whatever it is, to interest them that, hey, I have a whole posse of birds over here. You should come check them out. Cause like, that's where they're kind of just starting to, those birds are really starting to really push the boundaries of picking out the pecking order.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that first, I'll probably do a solid, maybe a minute and a half sequence, take a 5-minute break, do that again. And then the thing I've learned with turkey hunting is you just really need to be able to understand birds' behavior their responses and understanding like what those mean and the context of calling, because there's
Hmm.
obviously that fine line. Doesn't matter if it's early season, middle of the season, or late season, where you can call too much, you
Sure.
know,
Yep.
and you're going to just completely shut those birds off because they're not dumb. But guess what? Early season is the best time, in my opinion, to get a slam, especially getting like doubles and stuff like that. Like,
Hmm.
feel like that's some of your best successes because the chance of you getting more than one bird in are greater compared to when they're broken up
Hmm.
later in the season. So that's kind of like my strategy I go about it. I just try to make myself seem bigger than I am, and just by having multiple decoys, doing multiple different calling sequences to make sure I sound like I'm two, three, four hens in one setup. I think that those are some good strategies.
Yeah, that's a good strategy there. I like that. I'm gonna start taking some notes here to add it to my arsenal.
Well,
But
just come hunting with me.
well, yeah, that's the plan. I'll just go with the turkey whisperer, and then we're
Yeah.
good. But I mean, as far as like we talked a little bit about it right off the bat, is just for scouting. I mean, for me, and I'm sure with many others listening, or just in hunting in general, but I think something like Onyx is almost as
Hmm.
invaluable as it can be, because there's not only for scouting, but when you're actually, so like this, we could even go into this too. I mean, so like, let's just say we're not sitting in a blind, we're running and gunning. Where, are you how are you utilizing something like Onyx, where you're,
Hmm.
you maybe you're starting off with like an owl call, like a big,
Sure.
hoot, and then are you, I think now, especially now, they keep rolling out features like compass tool and stuff like that, where
Hmm.
you can, yeah, okay, I did, did a owl call and be like, okay, there's a turkey that way, and just guesstimate it with that compass tool. You can be like, okay, he's like 300 yards.
Yeah.
So let's say you've identified with Onyx that you have uh, a tom on the roost. How close are you getting to the roost?
So before we dive in that, I want to say one thing. Cool thing about Onyx and where technologies come.
Mm-hmm.
Like Onyx is such a crucial tool for me. Like when it comes to, and like we'll talk about hunting out the Black Hills, and I've had the pleasure of hunting turkeys kind of all around the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And Onyx is such a powerful tool because you could break down not only just by layers from a topographical side to a imagery side to breaking down types of trees from deciduous to the I can't even say the other
Deciduous
one,
and coniferous.
coniferous. Wow. Anyways, but I could break it down to like, all right, well, I want to only highlight oak trees, because like
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
I've seen birds roost in a lot of different trees. It just depends on where you're at. But I look at like if we're just talking, let's say public land in southeastern Minnesota, like, all right, I'm gonna try to find a good oak hollow,
Mm-hmm.
and I can highlight that on a map. I can coordinate that with the topography of where I think it makes the most sense of where those birds could be roosting. But to your point, your question, so if we're out there, let's say it's crack of dawn, I hit that first owl hoot or what, if it's a coyote call, whatever it is, just to get one to sound off.
Mm-hmm.
I It's so hard. Like if you're packing in a blind and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, I mean, it's better to be safer and keep your distance. I mean, like
Yep.
we've done it. I mean, last year, your bird that shot, we set up a blind. What we were 60 yards away,
Maybe. Yeah.
way too close, where you're trying to be as quiet as you possibly can. And it's hard because you don't really know what the morning is going to be like until you're in the spot. Because if you're in a back corner of a field,
Mm-hmm.
it might be windy by the truck, but it might be dead quiet in that roosting spot. And you get there and you're like, oh shit, it's really, really quiet.
Yeah.
So, but I would say, from that, I think 100 yards is a pretty good barrier to where
Mm-hmm.
you're still within personal distance of that bird, and you'd be surprised. I mean, like, especially it depends on the type of woods you're in, but like if you look hard enough, you'll pick them out of the trees and where they're at. And a lot of times, those birds have those designated roosting trees that they're in, but they also have designated like fly down spots that they're spending those first 45 minutes, either if
Mm-hmm.
it's in the woods, in a corner pocket of, where you get that L shape in the woods where they're in the field edge, where they feel safe and they can kind of congregate and just kind of, socialize. And then they break up, whatever that mid morning time is. So I think 100 yards is a pretty good buffer zone.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe if you have that knowledge of knowing that, all right, they're going to bust out in this field edge. It's
Yep.
usually where they go in the morning, of setting yourself in, a position where you can kind of be in the middle of that and maybe that roost tree.
Gotcha. Okay. That's good to know too. Now let's say we're running and gunning no blind. You're, you know, let's say 75 yards from where you're pretty confident they're roosting. It's daybreak. They're for sure flown down now. It's probably, you know, how long are you waiting before you're moving again?
This where it depends on
Mm-hmm.
if you're on a private track where maybe you have a designated set 40 acres that you're hunting, or if you're in public and you've got thousands of acres to work with. And I can kind of break it down for the two. I mean, saying if we're on a smaller track, a private,
Yep.
the hard thing with turkey hunting is they have the best eyesight, and they have good
Mm-hmm.
ears too, but they have some of the best eyesight in the whole entire animal kingdom.
Sure.
And it is, I mean, you've been with me when it's happened. It's the moment that you're like, all right, we're going to move. It's like there's a bird at 80 yards and we just got picked off because
Yep.
we decided to pick it up and move. And I think definitely like quadruple checking your surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
trying to give that last ditch effort of, making a call to see if you can't locate that bird. But I'd say, if it's, let's say sunup's at 6:30
Mm-hmm.
and first light's at 7, and it's, already 8 o'clock, we haven't seen anything.
Yep.
I'd probably stick it out till 8:30, because usually, that 2.5 hour time frame, those birds have well broke up from their groups, even if it's early season.
Mm-hmm.
And they're out meandering, kind of doing their own thing if they're going to go out feed or whatever it is. And I think that's a pretty safe time, I think.
Okay.
But the biggest thing I would say with all that, though, too, is, making sure, like I said, your surroundings are clear, maybe giving that last ditch effort call. And it's the one thing that, if you do get a bird that's responding back to you, but it's hanging up, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I would say I wouldn't be afraid to move away, you
Mm.
know,
Sure.
and just play that game of cat and mouse where I'm going
Yep.
to drop back 65 yards, hit another call, and just pretend like and then you can also, while you're doing that, you can go make your call 45, 100 yards back, whatever it is, and then loop back and try to
Mhm.
catch that bird as he circles back in too.
Sure. No, that's a good kind of reading the room, reading the woods,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it, to be able to. I kind of like that play of when they're hung
But
up, moving away a little bit to get them in a little bit more enticed.
yeah, and if it's public land, you're cutting big tracks.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Like especially if you're in a good density of birds, like if I'm not hearing a bird and it's 8:30 and it's been an hour and a half, 2 hours after sunup, I will keep moving until I hear a bird. And it's hard because like that's where like turkey hunting is just like deer hunting. It's the world of the what is the situation and trying to break that down. Like if you got a super windy day, you might not hear birds gobble. You might just need to figure out where they're at and just hang tight either in the woods, or if it's a super nice day, maybe getting out into a field edge where you can just see if they're out strutting. And that's like my favorite thing to do, especially where we're at down in egg country, is like I can promise you by an hour and a half after sunup, they're going to be out in the field
Mm-hmm.
sunning themselves,
Yep.
and they'll be in
Strutting it out.
somewhere strutting around.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be able to find them.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, there's been multiple times, I guess, just thinking now about when we've gone out, and I think I think it was last year when we were running and gunning on your guys' family farm, and we're like, we can hear these birds, but where in the heck are they? And when we
Mm-hmm.
climbed up the corner stand, is that old ladder stand that's been there for a
Yep.
while. And you just kind of got to the top, you look down to the south, and you're like, oh, there were 100
Yep.
yards on that fence
Right there.
line, and here we go.
Yeah. No, and it's yeah. I mean, it's turkey hunting is such a fun hunt because,
Hmm.
like I said, I mean, like I remember my first bird I shot when I was 12. Like how I killed a bird, and I look back at like my dad. My dad was a turkey slayer. He was not the best turkey caller by no means,
Yeah.
screeching, but he killed a lot of birds. And it's just about putting yourself in the right situation and just being able to understand. Like all that stuff takes time,
Hmm.
but like um just getting boots on the ground, just getting out there, man. Like I'm getting excited just talking about it.
Hmm.
Like it's coming.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's
Um
gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun getting out again. You know, just you're shooting your bow and you're getting ready, and then you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it's like all of a sudden you kind of blink and you're like, oh man, it's less than a month
It's
away,
time.
and it's about go time.
Oh no, it's I'm excited. It should be good. I mean, I just started really shooting my trad bow again here probably a
Nice.
week and a half ago of religiously trying to get arrows in every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I would say with shooting your bow. It's same thing with shotgun. Like, don't be the guy that go out there with a shotgun and just assume that the number 4 shot turkey load that you got from Fleet Farm is just going to shoot perfect,
Right.
because it might not. Prime
Yep.
example: I bought custom turkey shells for my 16 gauge. I think I talked about it one of the other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
This was 2 years ago, and I shot. That was my first shotgun bird since I was like 15,
Mm-hmm.
and I shot it on paper, I think 2 or 3 times out to like 20 yards. Was good. Never shot it past that though. Should have done that. And because those were custom shells, custom 4 shot shells from Federal.
Mm-hmm.
And with the 16 gauge, you could pay a poke at it at 40 yards. Well, I found out at 40 yards they shoot high. I don't know
Mm.
why, but they shoot high. And I had that bird, I worked these birds, and they came in, hung up at about 50 yards, and it was a do or die. It was like whatever the last 2 days of my hunt that I had, and it's like, well, either I'm a shooter or I'm not. And I felt confident, shot, missed. Birds had no idea. They're looking around like this, trying to figure out where in the heck I shot. Aimed a little bit lower, rolled that bird. So
Nice.
like that's the same thing with like shooting your bow though too. Like, don't be afraid. I would shoot in different weird angles. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Sitting
obviously it's not
down.
sitting down, sitting on your knees, off
Yep.
one knee. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you never know what your shot's going to be, and just as long as you're proficient with that, I think that's a this is the time to do it. I mean, you got a month here before the season. That's plenty of time to get out and practice.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I think that's some good stuff here. But before we end, I mean, what do you like real quick, I guess, what's your kind of must have as far as gear goes?
Ooh, that's a really good one. So I would say, I've added stuff to my collection now over many of years, and I'm actually updated, or I need to update my turkey decoys. I have all avian X's from 4 or 5 years ago now, but they're all starting to get a little bit sun faded.
Mhm.
And for the average Midwest Eastern turkey, they're not going to really care a lot. But man, some of the new decoys out are just they're unbelievably the detail that goes
Lifelike.
into them. It's crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But I would say for sure, as long as we're sticking with this early season theme, I think you can't go wrong. Go out and buy 3 decoys. Get
Mhm.
yourself a quartering Jake. It doesn't matter the brand. Get yourself a breeding, or not a breeding hen. Get yourself a bedded hen.
Yep.
Like, that combo of those two alone, I've killed. I couldn't tell you how many turkeys. Like,
Mhm.
10 or 15, like a lot.
Yep.
And I would get yourself maybe like a feeding hen or a breeder hen that you can mix in there. And I think that 2 hen to 1 Jake decoy is a really good one. As you know, depending on what your budget is you can step in having a full strutter, or you can
Sure.
step in having multiple Jakes, or
Mhm.
there's so many different sequences of decoys that you can do that are, even reaping. Like, that's another great one. That's not a great early season one. That's a great late season tactic. But
Okay.
I'd say 3 decoys is a great place to start. Obviously, having a blind, I think, is crucial for new hunters that are out there.
Mhm.
It's just such a luxury to be able to get away with having movement.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not, because that's one thing when you're sitting and you're posted up against a tree. I mean, like, I would rather kill a turkey without a blind every day of
Mhm.
the week, just from the sheer fact, even if we're filming, just from the sheer fact of, like, you just feel like you're in that moment.
Yeah.
I can't describe it, and it's just, you feel so much more intimate with it. So, but for a new turkey hunter, I would say a blind's a crucial thing, just because you can get away with movement. Those birds are none the wiser. I will say I've been in some spots where blinds just don't work. Turkeys pick them out. You actually got to brush them in, just like deer hunting.
Yep.
But I've also been in spots where you could stick a blind in the middle of the field and they don't care.
Yeah.
So, but I would say a blind is a good one for new turkey hunters, or if you're
Mhm.
filming, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Turkey calls, though, that's a huge one. The thing with turkey calls, it just depends on what your level of expertise is, and just how much you're willing to practice. Like, I would say if I had to pick one call with me to go out, I'd have 3 different diaphragm calls with me.
Okay.
And obviously, those take time to learn and to practice
Mm-hmm.
to get proficient with them. But like I have, like at all times, I'll have, man, I think I have like 15 different diaphragm calls. But like I'd have like a D cut, a bat wing cut, and like a ghost cut, because I could go through and do kikis. I could just do nice raspy cuts. I could purr. I could do everything with really a mouth, like a bat wing cut or like a ghost cut. I could do just about any call I'd ever want to do with the turkey call with those. I could gobble. I could do anything with those. So
Mm-hmm.
those for me like are essential. Like if I'm running and gunning, that's what I have. But I
Yep.
would say getting a good slate or a good ceramic slate or a glass slate.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really novice friendly, easy turkey calls that anybody could do. You could purr, you could cluck, you
Definitely.
could do just about anything with them, or a box call.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it's all what's in your budget, what can you afford. But if I had to
Yep.
pick like two, I would probably say I'd say a slate call mixed with a diaphragm call, because you could do two birds at once with
Yeah.
those two,
Yep.
with minimal movement. And then if I had to pick other things, stake down blinds are great. I don't really use them a lot, but I have in the past, and in a pinch, they're awesome. Like the ones you can just throw into the
Yeah.
ground and
Just
they'll
like a.
cover your feet and stuff.
Yep.
Those are really good. And a good turkey vest goes a long ways. I finally bought
Mm-hmm.
my first one 2 years ago now, and I don't know what I would do without it, because it's like my little like Swiss Army knife where I just have everything at my disposal. Um,
Well, and you pack heavy, so you got a lot of options.
that's true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would say probably one of the biggest things, and this goes for people that are deciding not to uh, sit in the blind, is you need good camo.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it enough, where turkeys have the best eyesight known to man, I think, in the animal kingdom, of just for what we can relatively hunt, in
Yeah.
realistic terms.
Yep.
Having good camo, face paint, face mask, one of the two,
Mm-hmm.
gloves. I mean, you'd be blown away. Like they'll pick you off just having your bare hand out there. So having gloves, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is a big one. And then this is going to be an off the wall one, but I got to give a shout out to like the hunting public guys. But it's tick season, man. Like we don't get
Oh.
them as bad as we do in southeastern Minnesota, but I found out here in central Minnesota, we're actually Todd County is like one of the worst. Todd and Crow Wing are
Mm-hmm.
one of the worst counties in the nation for ticks and for Lyme's disease carryover as well. So having, I can't even think of how you pronounce it, Pimetherium. I think that's how you say it,
Yep.
with a
Yep.
P. So making sure you're sprayed down. Either that, you got duct tape. I've seen that works pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Putting duct tape around your boots.
Yep.
But just being tick preventative in mind, I think, is a big one, because
Absolutely.
dude, they're out thick. I mean, they were out
Oh.
a week and a half ago, but I mean, now we got snow, so hopefully that killed off a good, good,
Get
good,
rid
good
of them.
handful of them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Awesome.
I'm trying to think what else. That's probably it. I mean, that's the cool thing about turkey hunting. You don't really need a lot. I mean, like I've killed turkeys without decoys, a call, and a gun or a bow, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's the fun thing about turkey hunting. It's a game of just getting out there and doing it.
Yeah, I will say, just to go off of gear prep, for anyone hunting in Minnesota, there is a new regulation about turkey hunting in a blind on public. You have to have an
Orange, yeah.
orange cap on your blind. That's new this year. So
Well, I will tell you what. In my opinion, it
it's
might be
smart.
might be an inconvenience, but I don't think turkeys could really tell you the less, and just from the
No
safety of it, because there's been, unfortunately, here in Minnesota, there's been a lot of
accidents.
sad
Yeah,
stories that have happened in the last probably 5 years, where
yeah.
it's not worth it.
No, it's a bird.
Yep.
It's fun as fun as heck to chase them and shoot them and all that. But at the end of the day, it is just a bird. So be safe and be smart.
And not to keep it too much longer, but I was going to say that another thing to think about too, when it when it comes to archery hunting perspective too, picking the right broadhead, I think, is a really big one. Because you hear a lot of stories of guys where it's like, oh man, turkeys are really, really hard to kill. And yeah, they are. I mean, you look at a kill zone, even with the shot. I mean, I've shot them with a shotgun and rolled them, and they've got up and ran away. I mean, like, they're incredibly tough birds. But I was going to say, from a bow hunting setup, having a really good, it all depends on the bow setup that you have. If you're shooting enough poundage from a speed perspective, but you got to remember you have probably a baseball sized kill zone, 3 different ways on that turkey, or excuse me, 4 different ways. You can shoot them out the back, underneath the wing, front side, underneath the beard, kind of that general, or you can shoot them in the head, So that's either shooting guillotines, really good expandable. I mean, couldn't tell you how many turkeys with a rage. It's never failed me. I've heard horror stories of guys that,
didn't open,
didn't work. But I mean, anything that expands incredibly large is great, because turkeys are a lot like deer, where if you body shoot them, they're going to try to go duck and hide in the thickest cover that they can find. And turkeys don't really leave a blood trail like deer do. I mean, they do, but dude, they're hard to find.
yeah. But especially if you, I mean, like, just thinking back on some of our hunts, I guess, real quick, but if you shoot them, get after them, and get a boot on them, because they can go.
Well, be careful of that, because I've gotten the shit beat out of me before, because if they're not dead, like, man, they are violent creatures when they're kicking with their spurs. Like you said, though, get after them, because you might not get another shot at that. The bird's not going to come back in.
No.
Yeah. So, and then shotgun wise, you can't go wrong with, like, I think 5 shots, like, probably one of the most universal best shots that, as long as you get a semi decent turkey choke and a pattern gun, like, you're going to be able to shoot a bird out to 45 yards. Like my old 870 I had with my Carlson chokes, I could throw 4 shot in there and I could shoot a bird at 65 yards if I wanted to.
Sure.
But I don't really see any ethical being really doing that. I look at with the shotgun, 50 yards is about like my
max.
cap.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I think that's probably a good spot to cut this one.
Hard to stop,
because it's like it's like our first dedicated solely to just hunting, and it's less than a month away, and it's like could sit here for hours and talk about it. But like Evan said when we started here, this is episode 1 of Turkey Talk. So we're gonna roll these out weekly, not only up until turkey season, but through turkey season too.
Yep.
Kind of give everybody kind of, as we progress, some more, mid-season tactics, late season strategy, kind of a not necessarily a rut cast, but a turkey cast, as far as what the birds are doing in at least our area. We've got potentially heading out to the Black Hills in early May, so we should definitely
that'd be a fun one.
Yeah, we definitely going to have some pretty cool stories, I think, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and definitely excited, and like Luke said it and he hit it on the head there. I mean, we're going to bring you episodes here weekly all the way till the end of the season, and then hopefully we'll be able to do the same thing, kind of going through, the summer months all the way into habitat work through all the way into the fall with deer hunting. And this is a good mix for us where, like I said, like our platform's designed obviously around our faith and our faith journeys, but also too talking about hunting and fishing and the stuff that we also love. And, I feel like this gives us an opportunity to kind of flex a little bit in both the worlds. And
definitely.
And then we could talk for hours about this. So it'll be good to break these up and do them weekly. So
definitely. Well, I think, like I said, good spot to end. Be sure to continue to, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff for wherever you digest the Wild Faith podcast. We're going to be rolling these turkey talks out, but we're still going to be doing our faith-based, fully faith-based, I guess, podcast every Monday. And so be sure to stay tuned for a lot more exciting content to come. Thanks,
guys.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through faith and the great outdoors. We hope today's episode has inspired you to seek God's presence in the wilderness and deepen your connection with nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Wild Faith Podcast on your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll continue to be a part of the Wild Faith Podcast community. We'd also love to hear from our listeners, so please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions, comments, or topic suggestions. You can connect with us on social media or through our website. Your feedback is important to us and helps us improve and tailor our content to better serve you. And always remember, the great outdoors isn't just a playground for hunting and fishing. It's a sanctuary for finding solace and spiritual renewal. As you gear up for that next adventure, I pray you find God's presence in the crackling of a campfire, the thrill of reeling in your catch, or the quiet solitude found in nature. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Wild Faith Podcast. Take care, and God bless.